Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Inside EMS. I'm Kelly Grayson, your host. My partner in crime, Chris Cebollero, is on special mission today. Something about secret nuclear power plant plans from a hostile foreign country. I don't ask questions. But here with us today is our special guest this week, Jimmy Apple, otherwise known as the EMS Avenger. Jimmy, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
You have been a big ubiquitous all over social media in the last few months, the last year or so. I remember you from commenting on the EMS blogs so many years ago. When I first saw you as the EMS Avenger, I was like, Jimmy Apple. That name is unique. I don't know of anybody else named Apple unless it's Gwyneth Paltrow's daughter. But yeah, I remember you from commenting on the EMS blogs so long ago. So what brought you spurred you to start the EMS Avenger? Where'd that come from?
It's funny you mentioned that because I can remember just kind of how blog was the medium, that kind of like the Reels format has kind of like surpassed. But I can remember being very active and, there being select blogs where, they were constantly in front of me and, there's a lot of interaction going. But I mean, actually, kind of that presence on social media was one of the things that actually did spur me getting into the EMS Avenger thing. I was very active on social media and I wanted to do something forward facing on social media. Um, and I have a love of learning and a love of education and a love of teaching in a specific context. And the the social media age married perfectly well with what I wanted to do there. Initially, I wanted to do a podcast, but I was kind of talked out of it by a friend of mine, Ginger Locke, actually with Medic
Ginger's
Mindset, who,
great.
yeah, she just kind of challenged me. She's like, "What are you going to do that other people aren't doing?" And I didn't have an answer for that. And so I just worked social media for a long time until my daughter started sending me funny videos, like just sending me messages that had these videos in them which kept prompting me to open to install the TikTok app, and I kept refusing.
Yeah.
And eventually one night I just was like, oh, let me just install it because I'm getting tired of like not being able to see what they're sending me. And then I was like, the light bulb came on for me. I was like, I bet you there's providers that are on this all day long scrolling through these videos and maybe they aren't getting up-to-date medical information. And if I could just sneak that in there, maybe, one or two videos a day, I think that I could actually do something meaningful. And the rest is history.
There's so many reels and TikTok videos out there from EMS providers that are not educational. Some of them are pretty funny. I like them for entertainment value. Some of them post some questionable stuff and some opinion posing as fact. I see the Captain America shield up there. Is he your favorite Avenger?
He absolutely is. I grew up
Yeah,
a huge Captain America fan,
me too.
huge Avengers fan, and that's really the impetus behind EMS Avenger. My kids knew my love of Captain America and the Marvel movies and the Avengers. And back when I was thinking of launching a blog,
Hmm.
they were like, "You should call that blog EMS Avenger," and that stuck with me. And when I launched the channel on TikTok, I was like, "Of course, it's going to be EMS Avenger." Now, I will say that I'm kind of struggling with identity right now because I get invited to speak all over the country and make appearances, and I'm promoted as Jimmy Apple,
Hmm.
and no one knows who that is.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of trying to figure out now how to make sure that I don't lose, who Jimmy Apple is in the
Yeah.
whole EMS Avenger thing. So talking to some people about how to properly incorporate that.
I'm familiar. For years I'd be at conferences and say Kelly Grayson, and they who, and I'd say ambulance driver. Ah, yeah, yeah. I read your stuff on the internet. I've got friends to this day that call me AD instead of Kelly. That's just their nickname. But in reading and watching your TikTok videos, you are the prince of evidence-based medicine as far as EMS goes. There's so much stuff out there, dogma, myth, and BS. I have to keep it PG-13 here. Um, I like that you break down science and show us how to evaluate it and how it is valid versus some other things. Your latest one, the mechanical CPR. I giggled until I nearly fell off a chair at the video. It's mine. You can't take it. What do you think? That was created quite an uproar when those AHA guidelines were released. I thought it was nothing. What makes you think that so many people were so upset over the mechanical CPR statement?
Well, I think part of it is simply because, the last updates came out around what, 2020, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the whole like Reels format where people they weren't getting this information spoon fed to them on a daily basis, right? And so this is the one of the first times where when something has come out like that, where people, the creators out there who are interested in this, like I put some content out on it from the floor of EMS World.
Yeah.
Peter Antevi put something out on it on the Hand Heavy Facebook group and his other platforms, and it wasn't to suggest that something cataclysmic had happened, but maybe just to affirm that this is the stance that the AHA is maintaining because it wasn't
Yeah,
a
it was
new
the same thing
position.
for
Yeah.
5 years ago.
But this may be the first time that some people did hear about it. And so
Yeah.
it was just like, what do you mean it's not recommended? But, nothing's really changed. But the problem is that the embracing the community has had for mechanical CPR is outpacing the evidence as far as it having any benefit over manual CPR.
Yeah.
And we're not going to unring that bell. So that's really where we are right now, is that this is our paradigm. It is something that's safe for us. It's something that's safe if you have to transport the patient. And you can say you don't recommend it for routine use, but we're going to use it for routine use. And, the AHA is not, they're not facing this and acknowledging that the paradigm is being defined now not by them but by the user.
Yeah, that's I have been saying for 5 years. People love their Lucas and Zoll devices. It's like, guys, the evidence doesn't support it. There's absolutely zero evidence, and they've studied it a lot that mechanical CPR is better. I have no issues with people who say, well, we don't have enough people to work a code. Okay, if you're manpower deficient, that's perfect. But don't tell me that it's better. Um, you know, this.
So let me just interrupt you though. I'm not
Oh, go
sure
ahead.
that I don't know that the evidence, I wouldn't say the evidence doesn't support it
Hmm.
because if you take the body of evidence, it just acknowledges that it's no better and no
Yeah,
worse.
exactly.
And in that case, the evidence does support it as, a substitute for uh, manual CPR.
Yeah,
And I also don't think that we have a strong body of evidence for the last maybe 5 years of use where the user has gotten more sophisticated in how to place it and how to reduce pauses, how to
yeah,
incorporate use of either Doppler or POCUS and making sure that we're actually getting left wall compression. So I'm not sure that the evidence doesn't support it. It just
it just doesn't prove that it's superior.
it's not superior,
Yeah.
and there is evidence that suggests that when you start performing like what we would call high performance CPR,
Mhm.
like systems like Seattle use,
Yeah,
that you can get a lot better and improve your survival numbers, where mechanical CPR is going to get you your 8% survival.
yeah,
So um, I think there's room for improvement in manual CPR. But there's still a lot to suss
yeah,
out there when it comes to that
yeah.
data.
It struck me that people were so vehement about this. Um, I've been watching this kind of interaction for 15 or 20 years now, and everybody's all about evidence-based medicine until the evidence challenges their practice, and then they're like,
Sure.
"Oh, that's a bad study." you know,
Right. And a good recent example is I covered the study that was released it wasn't released by the NAEMSP because they really didn't want to stamp their name on it, but it came from all of their databases, which is the one on spinal immobilization.
Mhm.
And, suddenly we have all the old guard, just like that's nonsense, that's BS, and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, I mean, it's not, but okay.
Yeah, I used to I do a lecture. I don't thankfully I don't have to do it anymore because everyone I'm preaching to the preaching to the choir, but it's called protocol directed torture.
Right.
That's what unnecessary spinal immobilization is. But you know the people are so down on the AHA for following the science and acknowledging the science. But that's what we've been griping about them all along is that they didn't practice or evidence-based medicine. They don't challenge the epinephrine, for example. You know, people are upset that this new set of guidelines didn't spell the death blow to epinephrine routine administration and cardiac arrest. Uh, what do you think it is about EMS providers that make us so unwilling to accept data and to you know look inward and really evaluate our paradigms and our practice? And what do you think is about EMS that people don't want to do that?
Well, uh, to begin with,
Yeah,
what we learn tends to define who we are as a provider, particularly the information we learn during our formative years.
yeah,
And I often explain it with this analogy. I'm a big fan of the rock group Kiss.
hmm,
And the lead singer of Kiss, Paul Stanley, was asked why Kiss doesn't put out new music anymore. And he said, because that music doesn't connect anyone to any meaningful point in their lives if we were to
yeah,
put it out now. The music that we put out back in the day, Rock and Roll All Night, Detroit Rock City, Alive,
yeah,
and the album Destroyer, all that stuff connected people to a time in their life when they were discovering the world, they were falling in love, they were partying, they were
yeah,
having fun, and the new music isn't relevant to them. This is a paradigm that we face, not just in EMS. I mean, in any trade where you have to keep learning, but people aren't connected to this new information. There are people who love mask pants, and they love mask pants because they learned
oh
about
God,
mask pants during their formative years.
me too.
People love Bertilium and Isoprel, and that's because they gave it during their formative years. People are still very passionate about bicarb, and that's because when they came up, even though bicarb hasn't been in the ACS algorithm forever,
Yeah,
they still are attached to these teachings. And so to give them something new, they're not connected to it emotionally. And so they're nostalgic for the things that they came up with. And that's the paradigm that you have to break through.
that's a great point. You know, the good old days. But if we look at it objectively, the good old days weren't really all that good.
Right.
But
And let me
they were when we were getting into the field.
and let me just say about the AHA too. It's such low-hanging fruit to kind of like dump on the AHA, and the thing is that the AHA is for dentists, for dentists, for a patient who suffered a
Yeah,
cardiac arrest in a dentist chair, and you're
yeah,
not a dentist. And so you don't have to follow the AHA if you're an EMS
right.
system. If you have a training officer who's keeping up with the data, you can implement a resuscitation program that has nothing to do with the AHA. And there's evidence out there that can guide you in that. Um, the Seattle has the saying that the AHA gets you exactly, I think it's 8% survival.
Yeah.
So, you can perform high performance CPR. You can alter the dosage of epinephrine that you give, and follow some expert recommendations. Like Peter Anteby doesn't recommend giving epinephrine in shockable rhythms.
I
And
don't think
he's
you
the
should
medical
either.
director.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's the medical director for Palm Beach County, and they
Yeah.
don't give epinephrine for shockable rhythms. And so the AHA is stuck with this problem with the fact that their recommendations aren't necessarily for who is supposed to be the experts in resuscitation, which is EMS.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be for people who are not experts in resuscitation, and they have to cast a wide net. And so epinephrine isn't going away until that wide net has been defined better, and we have no data that has defined it better. We just know that the way we're doing it now may result in higher rates of neurological devastation.
Yeah. I have said for years that EMS and the emergency department and the ICU need to take ACLS EP that's the course with any value, just a day of difficult resuscitations. And we should rebrand the ACLS course as resuscitation awareness for dentists and med surg nurses.
Right, yeah.
That sort of thing. It needs a good rebrand. But one
Yeah.
of the, the paradigm that we cling to the things of our youth that we practice in our former years hit me hard because God, yeah, we all think about the uh, way we were and the way EMS was when we were first learning and we were starry eyed, and now I look back at the man I used to be, the paramedic I used to be, and I think I miss that guy, but I also am better. I practice better now than I ever did. I tell people that I am more capable now of intubating someone than I've ever been in my career, and I am at the same time less likely to intubate someone than I have ever been in my career.
Sure.
And I think that people, if you don't change the way you practice, if you're standing still, EMS medicine in general will just pass you by. Um, do you get any pushback from people when you talk about this or that study, evidence-based medicine? Do you get naysayers that really just, oh man, you're full of crap?
I do. And, one of the reasons why I actually lean into the data is so that I don't have to defend that I'm full of crap,
Yeah,
right? I don't want to have to spend my time defending a personal position. I would rather simply talk about, how we can guide ourselves based on what, we are actually seeing
yeah,
with data that is objective as we can get it.
yeah,
But, there are people who maybe don't necessarily have a comprehensive understanding of data and statistics who will attempt to break a study through, something that isn't necessarily like a scientifically valid way of breaking a study. There's people out there who think a study is simply just a scale where you have something on one side and something on the other and don't realize how complex that data actually is. And, chances are, if you have thought of something that would be disruptive to the results of that study, chances are it's already been accounted for in the
yeah,
results of that. And then there's other people, that say things like, you can make a study say anything, um, you know, big pharma, I mean,
yeah.
which
It's the
to me is the
infamous
same
saying.
thing. Right. Yeah. Which, to me, when people say things like big pharma, I don't even respond because it's this nonsensical saying la chupacabra or the boogeyman,
Yeah,
I
they
mean, it's
want to keep us sick. That kind of crap.
right, and I'm not saying that big pharma, is this uh, benevolent entity out there that wants
Yeah,
the best for us, but just because they exist doesn't mean that data is invalid.
yeah, yeah. Um, that's I quit listening to the watching the EMS Facebook pages, social media pages so long ago because the volume of crap. Just it was better for my blood pressure and my mental health to just stop following that because to
Absolutely.
suss, to suss out the valuable stuff and the reasonable people from the screaming hordes, what my backboards. Uh, it's got tiring after a while.
Yeah. I,
Um,
I I do want to qualify what we said before about people pushing back, though,
yeah,
that because I lean into the data, that pushback is few and far between. And I don't even mean to disparage at all the people that are doing that. That sometimes I forget that my stuff may actually be someone's first exposure to
yeah,
real data, right? And so these are the people that I really want to see the content, so I
yeah,
don't blame them. This is the way that we learn, is we when our paradigm is challenged, we tend to push back. And so I'm glad that people are pushing back.
yeah,
And I do see a lot of people actually say, wow, I didn't realize that. Thank you. And so, I don't mean to imply at all, that, there's these dumb providers out there that are pushing
yeah,
back against data. This is, part of the process of exposure to data and acceptance of data is getting through your own biases and how it challenges you.
yeah. You know, I when I found myself being short-tempered with people and impatient with people that didn't and weren't picking up what I was putting down, it was time for me to go away because I'm not educating people. I'm bullying people on the internet. We have to
I
make
and
ourselves.
I'm going to speak
Yeah,
to that
sure,
too
rock on.
because there is that is a huge issue, right? Is that when you're feeling confident and you are empowered with a platform like I have, it can be very easy to lean into that. And
Yeah,
that is, if anyone's listening to this, I want you to know that that is a struggle. You know, I have goals to be kind, not just to patients, but to the people who are following my content, you know, to the people that I live with in my own house. And if you think that it's not a struggle for me as well as anyone else to adhere to that kindness and that patience, you'd be wrong. You know, and there's days where I've had an interaction where at the end of the day I'm like, man, I really regret the way that I responded to that person, or I
yeah,
don't like my tone in this video. So I'm working out my processes too on a daily basis.
yeah. I've had people who I respect and trust tell me, Kelly, come on, man. you know, um, don't be that way because people who are not responding to you as a way to behave, and that's not the way to do things. Um, the what do you think is the next big dragon to slay as far as our practice in evidence-based medicine? What kind of things, long-standing practices do we do that probably need some scrutiny and perhaps to abandon those practices for something better?
Well, I think the Great Wall of China that we need to get over in EMS is spinal mobilization. You know,
Yeah,
there is no quality data to support it, and there is s- quality data that suggests that it's actually harmful.
harmful. Yeah,
And that includes rigid cervical collars and long spine boards. You know, spine boards are an extrication tool, and rigid cervical collars, don't do what we actually intend them to do. And I think that, you know, this is just something that has to stop. And the things, what's getting in our way are like the trauma surgeons.
yeah.
Those are the people
And
who,
you think, you'd think that they'd be on board, but no. I
no.
I'm teaching an EMT class now, and it's a struggle that they're going to be tested on something that I think is poor practice. And it's always this thing. Look, the book answer and the test answer to this is backboard someone. In real life, that's harmful. Don't do that. Just remember it. Do it this way for the test. And I loathe doing that. There's the way you do it in classes, the way you do it on the street. And I actively, but when practice and the testing standards haven't caught up with current practice, it's tough. It's
Yeah.
tough. Besides spinal mobilization, anything else? Is every
Blood,
next thing that we're gonna really be looking at?
blood. I mean, but
Oh
blood
yeah,
is like our blood is the thing that we really want to become the standard of care. And there's going to be pushback against it because when you look at the data, there's not this massive body of evidence that says a ton of lives are being saved by blood. You have to get a little bit deeper into data to see where the benefits are. But still, you know, putting blood in someone is better than putting pasta water in them. And but putting plasma in someone may be better than either one in some scenarios.
I've seen
So
heavy stuff on the plasma.
yeah, so there it may make better sense for some services to carry plasma, particularly when we are very close to seeing spray dried plasma getting to the field, which is cheap and shelf stable. But blood is going to be the thing that I think, we're going to have to resolve over the next 5 years if this is going to be our standard of care or not.
Yeah.
And I'm fully behind it
Oh
as
yeah.
being a standard of care. When you put your mind to overcome the logistics, you can overcome the logistics.
Yeah. I think that the reason there's not a mountain of evidence is because it's still so uncommon. There's not a really big data set. It's not being done, system wide. There are a few forward thinking EMS systems out there that are giving whole blood or components, but not enough to really, there's the bandwagon isn't that big yet. Do you think we'll ever get a shelf stable blood substitute? That's
Well,
been
there
the
are,
holy grail for so long.
yeah, the last one they tried, I can't remember what the name was,
Yeah.
what the name of it was, did not pan out. But there are two human trials going on right now in Japan for artificial blood. One is it's artificial blood in name only. It's kind of like uh, hemoglobin that has been scraped out of blood
Hmm.
and packaged in like a special chemical. But there's two human trials going on right now, so we'll know within 5 years whether or not that pans out. And I'm pretty excited about that because that would be an absolutely revolutionary change in medicine as a whole.
Yeah, yeah. Well, medicine in Japan has been sort of willing to question the paradigm. They were among the first to really question the use of epinephrine. Some of the
Yes.
first studies on epinephrine. Um, this is a great talk, man. The um, evidence-based medicine is what we need to adhere to. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but I think that's the way forward in progressing through for our career field to move forward and start to actively question everything that we do. Um, it's tough. You look at something you've been doing for 20 years and go, was I hurting people all that time?
Yeah.
So we're getting up there in time. Why don't you tell us where we can reach the EMS Avenger on the internet and how we can follow your stuff?
I'm on all the major social media channels, so that's TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. I do have a podcast that's on all the major podcast platforms. I haven't done much with that podcast, just every once in a while I put something out. In the new year, that's actually that content is going to start coming out regularly.
Awesome.
Um, and so in most of those platforms, you can DM me as well. What I will say is that I love getting DMs and I try to interact with as many of them as I can.
But will you get
But
following like yours? Yeah.
yeah, however, there's two ways to ensure that I probably won't get back to you. The first is just to like say, hey, I don't have time to like have an exchange of messages for you to get to what you wanted to talk to me about.
Yeah.
And the other is to present with a wall of text. So either one of those, it's unlikely that I can stick with that message. So if you're just like, hey, I just have this question. If you get right to it, most
Yeah.
likely I'm going to get back to you.
Yeah. Punctuation and paragraph breaks are your friend.
Yes,
That's all right. Well, man, great talk. I enjoyed this, and we'll have to do this again. We'll have to have you back on the show again soon. But
I'd love to.
Um, you've heard our talk, Jimmy's take on evidence-based medicine and the crusade to educate our fellow providers. You know what we think. We'd like to hear what you think. What do you think about the AHA's new guidelines, or is there anything particular that sticks out to you that just sticks in your craw? We'd love to hear those thoughts at the show at ems1.com. And for myself and our special guest this week, Jimmy Apple, the EMS Avenger. Thanks for tuning in to Inside EMS. We're going to catch you guys next week.